2.1 billion shillings hidden hole in Chess Bank. You remember Chess Bank, it's been many years, but this has been an ongoing court case where it says here the Capital Markets Regulatory yesterday fined Deloitte after the audit firm failed to detect a non-existent 2.1 billion shillings Chess Bank account at the central bank that enticed bond investors to offer the collapsed lender billions. In addition to being fined 10 million shillings, Deloitte faces further scrutiny after the Capital Markets Authority asked the accountants regulator to probe the consultancy for failures that saw bond investors lose 4.8 billion shillings after Chess Bank collapse. Deloitte failed to verify a false claim from Chess Bank that it had 2.1 billion shillings in Central Bank of Kenya account, according to CMA investigative reports sent by the Business Daily. The non-existent account is believed to have inflated the cash position of bank, encouraging investors to offer it the 4.8 billion shillings in 2015 through a corporate bond. And that story continues on page 2 of the Business Daily. And I just want to ask, first of all, if any of our panelists here lost a tidy sum of money with the Chess Bank, it's a good time to open your hearts that will console you as well. And maybe also this will come as a relief at the end of the day. But let me just cross over to you, Bilo, because I know this was a big, of course, story also in the Senate. And you can tell us finally, do you think justice for many that lost their money has been meted out?
No, justice will be done when the investors or depositors get their money. But it's a very positive development, I think, to find that the audit firm, did not do its work as required by law and failed to live up to its reputation. Deloitte, like most of the other audit firms, tend to rely on representations by the executive. That's always the case on some of the transactions. And it's not the first time. I think a number of audit firms in this country have been found, particularly with audits relating to banks. Particularly with banks, I think audit firms have always been, banks are major clients for audit firms. They pay tidy sums of money, and there's a tendency to rely on the directors. And in this case, Chase, I remember this matter we investigated the Senate Finance Committee, but one of the things, apart from really the indication was very clear that the auditors did not do their job well. But we also in Senate had bones to pick with the regulator, central bank, because it's not, there's no, the whole process of auditing of banks is regulated by the central bank. The auditors have to be approved by the central bank. The reports that the agent go to the central bank for closer scrutiny. And I remember in the case of Chess Bank, before the audit report was signed, central bank got involved, and this is how they changed even the audit opinion that was to be given by this firm just before it was finalized. So I think I would have also expected CMA to tell us a bit of the role that the central bank officials played, because I remember we told the central bank governor and his team that there is culpability by his officers too. Because there's no transaction in any bank that central bank is not aware of. Every of transaction, even before the audit, if you maintain this kind of an account, which is false, you're saying I have money in central bank, and you give that in your prospectus to bond, investors in the bond, it's not even about the audit. Even before the audit, those kind of transactions are always, known to the central bank. So I would be surprised if no one in central bank has been found capable for this, and this is an issue that we asked the central bank governor at the time. Yes. Why don't you deal with the officers? How did this happen? How does a bank, do this kind of transactions right under your noses and your people are not involved? Because it's always, when you go into the details of what happened at this bank, people in central bank were aware of what's going on. They work in coalition. There's no way, because these banks are supervised so regularly, weekly, daily, in terms of reporting, in terms of inspections. in terms of the reports that they do. So it's not a, but I think it's a very good thing, and I think I like where they said also the Institute of Certified Public Accounts should also carry out further probe in terms of, because audit firms get licensed every year to practice, and I think they also are subject to practice reviews, by the peer reviews by other firms and by the institute to know whether their quality of audit assurance is reliable. So, but I think it's a very positive development, and although it took too long, but I would expect something else to come up also from the central bank. This is a matter that is in court. I know this bank issues are very strongly in court, from the shareholders, by the directors. The whole process of this bank is in court. But this is a very positive development, I think, in terms of really putting the auditors on notice that you cannot get away. It's the first time that this kind of a fine of 2 billion to a professional firm, whether it's auditors or lawyers or, this is the first time, and I think it's a good development. The maximum we've ever found, for this kind of professional negligence, if you will, has been 20, 30 million doctors, or, this kind of thing. But I think it's a very important message to all professionals that, you must be ready to pay a price for professional negligence.
Professional negligence. Right. Iraqi, I think it's Gitero, you wanted to say something as well.
About Deloitte. I think it's also sort of like the earlier one about Russia wooing, just a quick one. I think Africa, it's time we stand on our feet. As a continent, we have a responsibility. All this West, East, perhaps. It's time we start together. And the initiative like the Africa Train, we can actually leverage on. So this wooing left and right doesn't make sense as a continent, as far as I'm concerned. But I think they should have even gone further, and it's really trusting, because an auditor is somebody you trust, and it's supposed to provide unqualified. It's supposed to be objective. So I think they should even go further. The penalty is not enough. Suspend Deloitte for a certain period of time. Really, when you have a harm like Deloitte, and I think there's some times back they're also involved in Kenya Airways. I can't remember where in particular it was. It's time you just come hard on them. Chase Bank.
So is this maybe the problem? Question will be Deloitte doesn't do this in isolation, or any other audit firm as it is. They're in cahoot maybe with people to try and game and fudge the numbers at the end of the day.
Right,
so
right. But
it cannot be just Deloitte in isolation, is it?
But the bottom line, you have given me that responsibility as Deloitte. You are actually not giving a true and fair status, and therefore the consequences, and I like Bill's point, is that you and I lose whatever saving we have. That's the bottom line. And I think Chase Bank, and we know the saga about it.
Yes.
Even with the central bank, if you always can remember, there were even certain clips where they had taken people from the central bank out there. I'm not sure whether the officers of the owner of the Chase Bank, where they're just walking around. We play this like we are not serious. And I point Bill, you're bringing that. I expected central bank to come even more strongly here, because this bottom line is a bank, and the regulator is really the CBK, as opposed to CMA, which CMA here just came with the corporate board they had provided here. But the bottom line, to prevent other KPMGs, the others, the big five, whatever their names are, is to come hard on him, or Deloitte, and the others. And it is, and then XN is here. It's like I go there, I'm trusted to evaluate my students. And I've seen this student has scored an A, and they say, no, the student has scored a D. Or really, a student has a D, and I give a student an A. Now, take that forward. This student is an A student, actually is a D, will be hired by Dominic here. The consequences, you can think about the consequence in it. And is that the narrative perhaps we need to come from? And I think this is where the government comes in, through the CBK, through the CMA, comes hard on this kind of rogue elephants we have in town.
All right.
Yeah.
Iraqi, you wanted to say something?
If you remember when we started this discussion, it was about the integrity of IBC. And we are back to the same topic, integrity. And when we have been in this studio, the four of us, integrity has been coming over and over again. And I'm hoping whoever is going to be the next president from next month or so is going to come firm on integrity. I cannot believe, by the way, I used to have an account with Chase Bank, but I never lost money. But I can't believe that somebody can have a fake bank account in Central Bank of all places. We don't even have fake accounts in other smaller banks. So somebody somewhere is sleeping on the job. Number two is, why would Chase Bank cheat or tell lies that they have account in Central Bank without somebody exposing that? So I think we are seeing the interconnectedness of 3 or so institutions not telling the truth. Integrity again. So I really get concerned with Detroit because their reputation is going to be destroyed in this case. So let's focus on integrity. It doesn't matter whether you are a teacher, it doesn't matter whether you are an auditor, it doesn't matter whether you are IBC. Integrity should be our guiding right. She talked about A and getting student at D. He was my lecturer, by the way, but I won't disclose what grade he gave me. I'm a feeling that I always but I believe he was calling it Sakajari. But I was fair. So let's focus on integrity, because that's what is eating this country. And before I forget, I'm wondering, why is Gachagua and Laida wearing the same jackets? Just out of curiosity.
It was windy. they bought it from the same shop, maybe.
They should tell us. They should tell us
where they're buying it from.
Could they be talking behind the scenes?
Because of blue. Now the optics are very, very crucial. Yeah?
Yeah.
Whatever color that you choose, it really also determines, the statement that you. Unbeknownst maybe to you, people will be reading otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Dibal, this takes me back. And
he's asking critical questions.
Yeah, very true.
There have been critical questions for you, and it's been very squeamish for you. Last week, this week again.
The regulators have a place. They have a role to play. Now, let me take you back in early 2000 in the U.S. of Enron.
Yes.
Remember Arthur Anderson, $74 billion was loss of shareholder money value with Enron, just because of the shenanigans that Enron was doing, creating artificial shortages of natural gas around the world, and that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger ended up becoming president.
Arthur Anderson collapsed.
The governor, because he rode on that unpopularity of the sitting governor in California, because the gas prices, the petrol prices just went crazy. Because Enron manipulated and they created artificial shortages of natural gas. And by doing so, and they knew some of the liquefied natural gas, the tankers were in the ocean, just sitting there, and these guys are telling them they're not. But anyway,
that sounds like Mace scenario.
The Mace scenario, yes. So what happened? Arthur Anderson missed all that, and they misled everybody. The consequence of that was Anderson's license was withdrawn, and they collapsed.
Absolutely.
Okay,
and it was the largest.
And that was one of the largest audit firms in the world. But because they lost, they hid this from the public, from the regulators, both in Canada and the U.S. We saw something that we never thought would happen in the commodities market in the world, around the world. Now, Arthur Anderson lost the license. They later came and called themselves Accenture. I think they're operating. So I think they're in Kenya also. In other places.
Oh, they've moved.
They rebranded themselves to Accenture.
Yeah.
After that, what am I saying?
The genesis also of Otimorpho to the Otimorpho with the IBC as well.
It's very true.
You rebrand and
then
reinvent yourself.
Reinvent yourself.
That cloud of
And this tells you why KBC never bought Chase. When KBC started looking at Chase, KCB Bank.
Yes.
When they started looking at Chase, they opened that bonnet and they looked inside. The engine they saw there was like, this is a car without an engine. They closed the bonnet and they said, let us make money on the receivership. We are not going to buy this baby because this baby is an empty shell. And exactly, that's exactly what it was. For Deloitte to miss that, for me, that's a big deal. There should be some real consequences on the auditor, because we depend on the auditors to tell us what is going on under the bonnet, whether there's an engine or there's no engine.
Right. Even when we're talking about Andrew, we had Bilo says, yeah.
No, I just wanted to add, you see the central bank, at the time when the bank was closed, what they told Parliament, and they published, you remember, was that this bank was closed because it did not meet the statutory requirements of cash ratios and so forth, you know, and insider loans. You know, they talked of how the chairman and others were borrowing, you know, substantial amounts of loans, insider loans. Nothing about what the CMA now is revealing, which is why I think you know, this is very significant, you know, even for the central bank, because here there are false accounts, you know, at central bank, which are being published in an audit report, in a prospectus, and central bank is not, because for you to issue bonds and, you know, and those kind of things, the central bank has to be, it's not just the CMA, but central bank is also one of the institutions that will be keen to know what the banks are offering. So that's why I keep saying that there has to be some culpability. But this is a very complicated bank because there are so many cases in court regarding this, including the entire sale of the bank, even to SBM, is still being challenged in court by the shareholders. So we probably, but it's a good message to the auditors that they need to up their
the game.
Their game. Otherwise, they'll be in trouble. Yes. Yeah, but it's a good message to the professional firms.
Yeah, but you mentioned
who owns this bank?
Who owns?
Yeah, who owns this bank?
That's collapsed. Now is owned by Mauritius SBM.
The shareholders.
The issue of corporates or what?
Well, do you want to go there?
These are people we know, neighbor. And they're walking town enjoying themselves. It's so sad. In that case, lucky he never lost anything. There are people who lost their money. Our son, they lost money as a cooperative. And if I'm walking around there and it's if I've done nothing. It's like people saying here that people are involved in human rights issue, you are drugs, and you say, no, let's deal with it. Let's do Singapore way. But people know you are violating people. Like, how many people have you messed up yourself? How many people have chased back? Messed up. Yeah. And I think the moment we go for you, the third person will say, it's too tough. Let me not do it.
Yeah, you've seen families really crying.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Some of them, people committing, dying of suicide because of they had put all the stakes in
young
some
man.
of this. Yes.
A young man. He saw a certain transaction. I will not mention the bank. He's a very, very honest young man. He saw a transaction, and he said, no, you can't transfer this kind of dollars. But the instructions came from central bank. Do it. The young man resigned. He was 130. He resigned. He's doing his business today. But he couldn't believe it. That
you're gaming the system. You're violating your own...
Yes. Yeah. You know, there are transactions happening with that bank and central bank. A certain threshold.
Yes.
There's a certain threshold. But this one is so far. And the young man said, no. I asked, why do I need this? So you do it. He said, I will not do it. The same Mongera, Engineer Mongera, he's told this contract has gone to bill to the central bank to award, but somebody calls, the CS calls and says, no, it should go to Iraqi. And Iraqi has did not bid for that contract. So he just write a letter to the CS. Is it what you agreed? Yes.
That's why I'm poor.
Then, the letter was taken to the CS then. He just tore the paper. Then you all know what Engineer Mongera went. He went through hell going to the anti-corruption. But the witness became hostile. The man was doing the right thing. And I think we need, the point I'm making, we need those people. And I think XN is spot on. Right. I wish we can do this election on integrity. That's what we are looking at this country.
You had something to say
So
before.
why I'm concerned about the banks I remember when Imperial Bank was put at a receivership or was closed by the central bank.
Yes.
I remember talking to a lady pensioner who is 80-something.
80-something.
And she was crying. We are talking about the history of Kenya. She is a Mzungu from somewhere. I will not name her. But she tells me, you know, my pension was in this bank. But I'm imagining how many people's pension have gone with these banks under. But my biggest question is not even that, is why is it taking so long?
Correct.
Remember when Chase Bank collapsed?
Yes.
And we cannot resolve that issue? I want the system, the justice system in this country to be like the Supreme Court when you have a presidential petition. How long does it take? 14 days? People hear their submissions and a decision is made. Other big issues like this should be dispensed of in 14 days or 1 month. Why does something have to drag for months and years when people are suffering? This is injustice. So this is good news, but it should not take this long.
It should not take that long.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, one of the you see, it's not only this investigation. You remember Ethics and Anti-Corruption was also investigating the collapse of both Imperial Bank and Chase Bank because of culpability of central bank. By the way the central bank put those two banks under, we challenged it in Senate. Personally, I mean, I was chairing the committee.
You challenged the committee?
Because both banks do not have, you know, problems of liquidity. There are ways of handling. For example, in this case, if directors were involved in some fraudulent transactions, they could have taken action on the directors and the banks would have continued. But you know, the moment you announce that this bank, I'm going to take action, then there's a run on the bank and the bank collapses. This is what happened. Both of them were, actually, the central bank, you know, acted very rationally in the way they handled both banks and were responsible. But in any case, this matter, you know, it went to Ethics and Anti-Corruption was investigating. In the case of even the Imperial, actually, the DPP had actually taken also ordered some investigation because, and the investigations were involvement by CBK officials in the bank. This is the investigation that both ESCC and DPP were investigating. Yes. So, I mean, you know, banks are so highly regulated, by the way. It's not an easy thing for you to just do things and get away with it.
Conferences people being sponsored by Chase Bank, who were in Central Bank. And it's still
integrity again.
Integrity. There's a whole issue that when Professor Mwenje, you're talking about Enron and you know, the collapse of Enron and how it really went down. And we saw that particular crisis, what it really brought about when it comes to the issue of corporate governance. I think that's where was the genesis where corporate governance really came to play. And we had a whole a bill that went to Congress with Sabali Oxley, a bill that now we have the genesis, and everywhere we have the corporate governance really coming to place as well. Because when you look keenly, in all this malfeasance that is happening with these banks, with other corporate and state agencies as well, it is all boiling down to corporate governance. And isn't it? Corporate governance completely. If there were cahoots, as you say, was it really handled in the wisest of fashion? Was the whole issue of Chase Bank salvageable at the end of the day? If it was handled in the proper fashion and people did not really panic and there was a bank run at the end of the day, will Chase Bank be there today?
Without the involvement, let me tell you, in the 90s, you remember late 90s when 36 banks collapsed, I did some work for Central Bank at the time on the corporate governance because I'm a trained specialist on corporate governance.
Okay.
But let me tell you, but those days, it was before the Central Bank came up with this prudential guidelines for the, you know, things were a bit lax. And so a lot of the banks were involved in insider lending and other malpractices. You remember when all these Continental Bank and most of these other small banks, about 36 of them collapsed late, in the late years of Moi. But over the years, really, the issue of corporate governance, you know, and the prudential regulations governing the central bank, things have been a bit tight. And unless there is coalition with central bank, it's not easy for the banks to engage in this kind of fraudulent activity on the scale of this scale, you know, without notice by central bank. It's not easy. Yes, because what happens is, and you've seen when Dubai Bank collapsed and so forth, you know, all those things, what happened, the same thing is happening today in insurance. You find an insurance company that cannot even, you know, meet its basic obligations like pay claims when they, you know, when you file a claim and so forth, and they're still being licensed by the regulator. So sometimes when the regulator looks the other way, then this is what happens. Otherwise, for the banks, I'm telling you, central bank, with the kind of rules and regulations and the way they conduct their, supposed to conduct their activities, it's not easy for banks to engage in this kind of things and get away. But on the other hand, the way they reacted was partly responsible for the chaos in these two banks.
And you look at the fleet of the banks which have collapsed.
Could I ask, when it's a bit quiet, I don't know if you mentioned fund, and you mentioned to do his homework here, checking out.
But as I said before he comes, I was saying, you look at the trade which the banks which have been collapsing. There's a certain trend, and who suffers is more Africa. You know, you're dealing with Wakoras. I'm doing some work for Engineers Board of Kenya. And there's a certain people here, they collude. And I think it's a responsibility of us as even the government to take, the US is there, taking, your license is suspended. Why can't people like Deloitte suspend their licenses? They feel the pinch. Because I'm feeling it myself. You know, Iraqi and I know how much we get every month. But you save and save somebody, it's clear. How many Kenyans read that? And I think, but the other point we have is, was it Tuesday? When the Minister for Education, I'm happy he has apologized, wakes up and say, close today.
That was wrong.
We don't think beyond who I am. You can say you're brave as a minister to pick kids. How many parents can do that? And I think if you're looking at the government, which the leadership is putting the other person in your position and appreciating what they can do and they cannot do. So I think the whole concept that I can really place myself, and I remember the deputy presidential debate in Catholic, some of the cadets being asked, how much does kerosene cost? They have no clue. A liter of kerosene. How much does bread cost? So even when you say now we go for this, to them, I'm okay. So I'm happy George Magoha, the professor, has come and apologized for that. But before I forget Diba, because I think we must congratulate our young man for winning the 100 meters.
That one we will. That was fantastic.
Fantastic.
We will give a whole dedication and some time to congratulate the fastest man in Africa.
He proceeded to tell them I'm still.
At least he made it on time.
He made it on time this time.
So there are no visa issues as well. He had a good time. This is how he performed in the US.
The whole thing was him.
Eugene.
The whole thing was visa was him.
It was him.
It was him. And
let's not go there.
So finally, I think the bar what you're looking at, and I agree with Bill and Prof here, is about governance and integrity in all these things. And that's why as we look into the next government, we have to look into the integrity issues, the corporate governance issues, the things that glue us together. And we also have to look at, when you're talking about the law at the beginning, and I still remember, laws are usually a reaction of the realities of the present. And I remember in the US during Jim Crow laws, there was at one time a black person was defined as 2/3 of a human. And it was law. And it was done that because the white wanted to make sure the black people cannot vote. For you to vote, you have to be a full human. So when you're missing a third, then you cannot be able to vote. So when we look at the laws, they are also a reaction of the times. And that's why honor sometimes goes to Parliament to make sure that some of these things that are happening are actually corrected by enacting laws that correct some of these issues that we are dealing with.
But let me cut you here. Let me cut you here. And the bill is here, who tell us, is a corporate government. We have King 4 Code of Conduct. CMA have adopted it. We have all these things on the ground.
We have the Mongozo.
Yes.
For the state agencies.
They're all there. The laws are there. There's something here we need to push to make them work, to actually implement them.
Absolutely.
And the enforcement himself was here.
Enforcement of the laws
in South Africa.
Yes,
he was here.
Can I interject?
Sure. Had he finished? I think he did interrupted there.
He was interrupted by him. I think the issue here, and this is what I said a few years ago, when we are choosing the next president, we should make sure he is either a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Or a philosopher.
Somebody or a philosopher, somebody who can understand our behavior. Because all this has been registered, King 1, King 4. In the road, we have thought about our behavior, which cannot be registered. If you look at the Asian values, the Japanese, the Chinese, they are not doing very well because their things are registered. In fact, the Chinese constitution is at 6 pages, ours is 211 pages. So it is it's about the way we are brought up. What the values are we given us through the schools, through the churches, and so on. So until we are able to crystallize that behavior and understand it and influence it when we are young, all these codes are not going to work. The way you bring up
now I can finish my point.
You are interrupting, Chief.
and therefore, that's why the political regime of the time defines the national psyche.
That's true.
And that we have to be very, very aware. During President Kenyatta's time, the first president of this country, that's the time when we are young people, we believed in hard work. And we worked hard, you go to school, you get out, you get a good job, you start a business. Then Moi came for 24 years. He totally destroyed the national fabric that had been built during Kenyatta's time of hard work and accountability. Where now this issue of dealing, taking without creating value, and all that. So this manner of things that happened during the 24 years of Moi, Kibaki spent about 10 years trying to undo what Moi had done for over 24 years. Now come the next regime that we are looking at, and we can see, if you look at the standard, you'll be able to tell the kind of things that are happening. It's not by accident that all those faces belong in one part of the political divide. Those are things. And that's why I was looking at this and I was saying to myself, is this a political witch hunt, or is it actually, why is it that it's only these guys on this other side that are in trouble? But when you look at it, it's really not a political witch hunt. It's one of those things that are reality that we have to face. And that's why I keep on saying, during Kibaki's time, which you served,
presently so, it was very nice.
There was this feeling of, now if you work hard in this country, you get somewhere.
There was money in the pocket.
Okay, you don't have to worry about cutting a deal here, a deal there, and a deal there. You don't have to be a tenderpreneur making money out of nothing and inflating the cost of everything. Those problems are usually there because of the national psyche that is guided by the political climate in the country. And that's why in the next government, we have to look at integrity, integrity, integrity.
Right.
I think my neighbor here is too quiet.
Duval, you know, there are certain things which we may not always agree. I was in Parliament when President Kibaki was in office, but unless Prof has selectively decided not to remember, if there was any time when corruption overshadowed the entire time of Moi, it was during the first 5 years of Kibaki. You remember when up to 5 ministers had to be sacked because of the Anglo listing.
Yes.
I mean, it was not, the economy did well, yes, but the issue of corruption never bettered in any of these regimes, including now when it's even the worst it's ever been. But I think the issue is, we have institutions, we have laws, we have regulations. That is basically what we have. It's about compliance. So what Prof is saying is that CMA, in terms of corporate governance for listed companies, CMA has the rule book. They are supposed to enforce. When they don't enforce, then this is what happens. You've seen what happened in Uchumi, you've seen what happened in Kakuzi, you hear about this happen. Every time, in all our institutions, there is always this lapses because of failure by one institution or the other to enforce compliance. And it's largely because of what, you know, about integrity, you know, about what we've said earlier, because of, it's not that people don't know, you know, it's people know, but failing to enforce compliance partly is because of lack of integrity, you know, or because of corruption and these kind of things. So I think as long as our country has this problem of integrity, has corruption is pervasive in the society, then we'll have this kind of failures. Although, to be fair, in every country in the world, institutions Sometimes, you know, this even the best of the, you've seen the Wall Street. In the best of the countries, these things happen, and the professional funds sometimes do fail to live up to their task, and they get, you know, they pay the price, and this is what is happening. So I think, but it's a good development that it's happening.
And the beauty is you can make money. You can make money in a clean environment. You actually can. It's possible because we have seen institutions. We have seen countries like, and I keep talking about Botswana, and I think it, to me, should be a read for most African countries. This is the second producer of diamond. Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone, West Africa, where they have diamonds. They have been fighting over the years. You have never fight about diamonds in because they are very clear. If you're caught with it, you are dead. So there are no two ways about doing diamond in a independent 11, 12 kilometers of road. Now they have, like, every road is.
The bigger question that we should be asking, and you're talking about compliance, and I think we've talked, you know, donkey years about compliance in this country. Oh, we have good legislation. Oh, it's been, you know, copied by which is this country?
Botswana and others, everybody, Rwanda and every country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had Singapore. Singapore is the country I'm looking for, and the issue is implementation. We have Kenya Kwanza saying that they will come up with a commission to tackle corruption. We have countries like Qatar, if I'm wrong. Is there a Ministry of Happiness? There's a Ministry of Happiness.
In UAE.
It's in UAE. Ministry of Happiness. Why can't you come up with a Ministry of Compliance? This is your sole job, to make sure every institution is complying with comply with the code of ethics, comply with the corporate governance.
We have. It's not called Ministry of Compliance, but it's called the Ombudsman. That's primarily what is.
What is
go around and see that.
What is that?
What is it?
It's in the Constitution.
It's there. That's all.
Have you been feeling the weight of Ombudsman under even Florence Kajuju right now? Yeah. We had Otindo Molo by then. At least we could feel the weight. But maybe it's a good time. Primarily, we say Ombudsman is not given the weight and the resources to make sure that every institution is compliant. I think it's a good thing to
add another Minister of Implementation and Compliance. We need a Minister of Implementation.
That's what I'm saying.
You have a lot of these things.
Ministry of Implementation and Compliance. And that the Chief Minister will
see, in the Parliament, we have a committee called Committee that deals with implementation of every law that has been passed in Parliament. Because, you know, you
it is the one Jeremiah Kioni is oversighting?
Yeah, there is. I forgot the name. But, you know, the idea is every legislation that is passed.
Constitution Oversight Implementation Committee.
Apart from that, I think
that one I think collapsed. The one that Charles Nyachai was heading. That was a commission, Constitution Implementation Committee,
for example,
the CIC.
Auditor General does a report on when he audits ministries and institutions, then goes to Parliament, is adopted with the recommendations for action. Those recommendations must be implemented.
The oversee committee.
You know, by normally it's a treasury which is mandated because it's all about finances mostly. And so in terms of overseeing to ensure that those things have been done, when the auditor says from next year, you know, this ministry must do this and this and this and this, that implementation is not being done, I'm telling you. It doesn't happen in any ministry or anywhere. So it's true that's a challenge. But as to
maybe we should challenge the next administration, whoever picks up.
Yes.
And the ministry that are being doled out. Now people are struggling to create ministry. Well, it's a good idea now that we're giving them that you can come up with a Ministry of Compliance.
I'm against coming up with so many ministries because we have enough rules and regulations now to implement anything.
But it's not working.
So why don't we implement that?
That's what I'm saying. Because all these laws, why can't we have all this confluence of laws being drawn into this vortex of this ministry that can actually implement it? Because we have laws, but they're spread all over.
So you're talking about a super ministry. But we have the office of the president, we have the executive that's supposed to implement all those rules and regulations, in my opinion. So why don't they implement all those rules, all those regulations, all those compliances? I think it's a question of lack of political will. And maybe a bit of lack of patriotism.
No. The question we've been hiding about or are behind political will. For how long will we be hiding? There is no political will. So if we have a sole ministry that this is a sole function of you implementing all these policies, legislations, the buck stops with you. There's no political will. If then we hear of anything like political will as a stock excuse, then will tell us who then is an impediment to you.
Then in that case, it's about bringing a Lee Kuan Yew in this country. It's about leadership. You can have a very powerful ministry on paper, you can have all these oversight things on paper, but as long as the leadership is not enforcing and holding people accountable, it will never work. We need a leader who will say, this is the way to go, this is what the law says, this is what the regulations say, and if you contravene any of this, committee is opened, and we can open another wing in committee for you. But
if we have
but the idea is not far-fetched. We can have, within ministries, within ministries, we have got State Department of this and that. There it is a sub-ministry. Within, for example, if you go to Ministry of Infrastructure, you'll find a State Department of this, State Department of Roads, State Department of Transport, with a PS on its own. The minister is one up there. So within Office of the President, for example, if because of political will that is necessary,
indeed,
and they're the ones who are coordinating and supervising government projects, by the way, and now that's what Matiang'i was doing the last few years. So you can have a State Department of Implementation and Compliance, or something, what extent you're saying, and you put a PS.
Yes.
And you tell him, my friend, every single decision or policy passed by government, it's your mandate to ensure that it is complied with and, and implemented. That kind of thing, I think it's something, I agree, but it's tied to the political will.
I think this is what I'm against. Having layers and layers of institutions, that is going to make them dysfunctional. We should make the governance structure as simple as possible, not have a layer of another institution.
No, I think the bar was not, if I got you right, I think you're not perpetuating for another add-on. The Constitution is very clear. But as you're compiling that, we have a doer ministry, kind of. Let's do it.
All of them should be doers. That's why they're called ministers.
But you see, we have, and I think when it's sad, when you listen to Kenyans, and we are Kenyans, other parties like, we are very good at talking, theorizing.
Yes, we are.
It's time to sit down and get this guy who said, you ever go this or you go out.
Absolutely.
He told one the airlines, Singapore Airlines, if you are striking, go home.
Yes.
Go get other people to do. It's the best airline today as we talk.
Yes.
Professor Raki has really got this. Look, the issue is about political will. Treasury, for example, appoints every accounting officer. So the permanent secretary, Minister of Roads, or Minister of this, these are all appointed.
Sure.
And if anything happens in terms of misappropriation of funds, that office of the Treasury has the powers to withdraw his appointment as an accounting officer that PS of Roads.
You hear that?
The thing is, because of lack of political will, that's the point, because he is also appointed by the same appointing authority.
Correct.
And he feels that if he takes that responsibility away from the PS Health or PS Road because of misappropriation in that department, that docket, he gets in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think that is where the challenge is. Otherwise, responsibility.
We have an example here. This lady in the health, PS.
Susan.
Muchache.
Yes, during COVID, she was a leader. Something happened, and it's out of her. And she's being taken to Parliament to answer things which are beyond her. And I think what we use when do, fine, let's have the leadership. But how do we Kenyans hold that president accountable? Can we actually say that we're actually bringing that we don't want this president because he's not fulfilling what they did? I think we have to go a notch higher. Because I can have a president there, and I can do whatever I want. And that's the biggest challenge we have, that we have a way. These are what you actually see in this country. Yeah, Ilaki is my brother, whatever, and you are the head of the country, and we just lay that. We actually come and say we can. I don't know whether the word is to impeach. I don't think the 190 can impeach because it's Parliament. But through our elected leaders, I think we also have to hold the head of the state accountable.
Right. So in other words, Diba, what I'm hearing, and which is what I'm thinking we should be doing, we should be looking at re-engineering our government. Those things that have worked, we continue. Those that have not worked, we reimagine the government, re-engineer the government to make sure that in strategy, there's something we call structural weaknesses. And what we have is a lot of structural holes within our governance structure. And we need to find out where those structural weaknesses are within the governance structure of the entire government and start now putting back integrity within the structure of government. We need to re-engineer government, see what is working, what is not working.
Exactly.
Whatever is not working, we change. Whatever is working, we keep. And then we have a government that's functioning. But that takes leadership.
Right. And I think also the biggest question that we should have brought, if the next government that is coming, we have a few minutes just to wind up, and I know it's a bigger topic, we can handle it maybe next week. The executive powers of the president and the executive orders, how have they been implemented? Have we been having an overplay of his hand in some of the executive orders he gave? If we may just broach the subject and critically get granular with some of the executive orders that have been executed by the president. A case in point, we have the CASS, which was not an organ of the Constitution, but we have an executive. Was it really called for that we have a bloated sort of a mongrel of a government, going with the deputy president's word, that we have a mongrel of a government? We have the CSs, we have the principal secretaries, and we have a line of CSs under them. Duplication of work completely. And we are actually talking about a bloating wedge bill. Did the president also expeditiously, when we look at the executive order, did he overplay his hand? And how do we term that for the next coming government as well?
Yes, I think that's obvious. I mean, you know how many cases
briefly, because we have only 4 minutes to go. Yeah.
How many cases have been brought to court challenging those orders by the president?
Yes.
Not only orders, by the way, appointments. You know, there are dozens and dozens of court orders stopping some of the presidential directives, presidential orders, presidential appointments, even into institutions and so forth. So, and it tells you clearly, in every case, the court was very clear. Either it's a breach of the Constitution or a breach of a law somewhere. And it's not as if the office of the president was without advice and did not know that what they were doing was not right. But I think clearly it was an attempt to try and overreach themselves and go, and do some things, outside of their mandate in law. And you don't remember that order also on the courts.
Yes.
So I think this unfortunately has clearly, even after the new constitution, shows that we don't have commitment. We don't have really constitutionalism is still something that has not become internalized in the leadership in this country. And we still use it for expediency. I comply when it's necessary. When it's not necessary, I can flout it. And so I think unfortunately that seems to be the challenge we have. Yeah.
Thank you, Bilo. Raki.
I think the problem we have is very simple here. We vote for leaders, and even next week we are going to be voting for new leaders. But after they go to the office, the voters fold their arms, and then the leaders do what they want. As a voter, you are supposed to be vigilant even after voting.
Absolutely.
Because if you leave the leaders the way they are, they'll do what they want. And I want us to go the California way, where you can recall an MP, you can recall an MCA, you can even recall somebody who does not function. And the moment leaders realize they can be recalled from office because they cannot perform, they will perform. Don't vote next week and then go and look for an armchair. You must remain forever vigilant.
Right. Let's hear from Professor Mwanja, briefly.
I think closing, I'll be asking Kenyans, when you go to the ballot box next week, vote for somebody that you believe will lead this country somewhere and not take us back. Vote for integrity. Vote for good governance. And the person you look at, vote for that person that you say, I wish this guy was my uncle or my cousin or my niece or my nephew, because of what they stand for. Don't vote for people that are going to take this country the wrong way. Sure. The next liberation of this country is liberating this country from corruption, bad governance, and giving this country a chance for an economic takeoff. And a corrupt system, that will not happen. We have to vote for integrity.
Thank you. Vote for integrity. Okay.
I think the executive order you raised, I think it's important that the president at times have the right to do the executive order, but it's very important to appreciate that the Constitution is supreme. I think that's the bottom line. Just a quick one. The last weekend we went, a friend of mine went to Dodora, and he studied in India. He said he had never seen so many people on the streets in his life, except in India. here. And that is disaster. It's disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So we come in, the reason you have that, the people are not happy, is because of the leadership we have. And I like what Iraqi is saying. I wish Iraqi can also spread up to the president. If he's not delivering, we go for him or her.
Enrico.
We have to vote wisely next week. If I was to, this election should be won on trust and integrity.
Trust and integrity. We'll leave it at that.
And the economy.
Thank you very much for coming through this morning. I really appreciate that very massive discussion we've had this morning. Professor Iraqi as well, thank you for coming through. Professor Dominic Mwenja, thank you for coming through. Also, Professor Gituro Wanena, thank you for coming through. Next week we're here.
And you should also get the title now.
Next week you're traveling to Mandela to vote?
And the greetings.
You guys will be 24 hours busy with the...
No, we'll need you. We'll need you. We'll need you. We spoke about this.
And greetings from Navahora and Shamahoho. I was told to bring those greetings in person.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the greetings. I really do appreciate it. All right, this is what is on the front page of the Newsweek as we're leaving. We were to discuss about recession and how you can recession-proof your life. This is coming up, and Newsweek has actually covered this very broadly in their latest cover there. Writes, recession-proof your life. Weighed down by soaring inflation and a troubled economy. These 15 moves will help if you want to recession your life. It is coming. The recession is there. It's a reality on the ground. So we need to pare down on some of course, expenses. If that ugali is big, you eat thrice a day. All right. Now you need to tame it down to one in a day. Thank you very much for your valued company on Sokoni here on Morning Prime. Don't go away. Much more coming up on the other side of the break. We'll be hosting Professor George Wajakoya, the presidential candidate, and of course him to give a very good clearance on whether he's endorsing Raila or not. We saw that yesterday on social media, but he came out stoutly denying. But we want just to hear from him as well. If at all